Hello, everybody. I'm Fitz, Soul Scribe and Stomp Scribe. And for those of you that are not familiar, Soul Scribe is a coinage that I created because I'm a coach and I help people author the story of their life and become the scribe of the destiny of their soul. Coaching, teaching, journeying with people, supporting people, and championing what's possible rather than what's probable, and supporting people to create a greater access to their own creative core and their capacity to actually create their internal experience as well as results in the world, rather than living in a reactive state and in victimhood. So in this journey, I like to find different bits and pieces of spiritual teachings, guidance, ideas that expand awareness and deepen insight and raise the level of consciousness, particularly from the Rebbes of Chabad, the spiritual teachers of Chabad. Now, here is a couple of excerpts that comes from some notes that the third Rebbe of Chabad, the Tzemach Tzedek, had written for himself. And we can safely say this is a kind of motivational self-talk of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad, to himself. And I've taken two pieces out over here that I'd like to share with you today. One is, B'chol davar hascholos koshes. In every matter, the beginnings are difficult. V'nidmek ahar, and it appears like a mountain. The Tzemach Tzedek is essentially, he's reflecting to himself how when he takes something on and when he begins something new, a new initiative or a new commitment, it's overwhelming. You know, it seems like a mountain, like insurmountable. Aval hahergol al kol davar shilton. However, once one becomes accustomed to it, one gains mastery over it. So Tzemach Tzedek kind of encouraging himself that even though at the outset things can seem overwhelming, goals can seem insurmountable to achieve, or obstacles can seem insurmountable and goals can seem impossible to achieve, but with practice, we gain mastery. And he invokes a Gemara. The Talmud in Shabbos, in Tractate Shabbos, Sabbath, states that one is not permitted, according to some opinions, to go out on a ship, to go travel the seas within 3 days of the Sabbath, preceding the Sabbath. And the reason for this is, according to some of the commentaries, is because the first 3 days are anxiety-inducing and very uncomfortable, and it can take away from a person's capacity to enjoy and be present with the Sabbath. But after 3 days of being on the sea, things kind of settle down. A person has become accustomed to it. A person has practiced essentially being on the sea and tolerating that environment. So then he begins to achieve a mastery over it and no longer compromises. Another interesting piece where the Tzemach Tzedek is kind of reflecting to himself, he says, he speaks to himself, V'gam chazisa, and you've even seen, referring to himself, this is self-talk, Eich kol hapchodim, kishe'hamachshava penuya. You've seen yourself how all the fearfulness, all the fears, all the anxieties only show up when the thoughts are like idle. On the other hand, when the thoughts are invested in Torah study, then there's no fear. Ella, except you've thought, he's talking to himself, you thought that was impossible. That was an impossibility to actually master where one puts the full attention of their thinking. But you've seen that it's possible. So this is just so interesting. Two different things. You see how the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe, is kind of grappling with himself and how he's encouraging himself and cultivating himself. One is, yes, in the beginning things are difficult. They can even seem insurmountable and unachievable, but through practice, one gains mastery. And clearly this was his experience. Actually, in another spot in this note-taking, he talks about that, how he was working on standing for the whole duration of prayer, and how through practice and commitment over time, he mastered it. and also about having thoughts that are fearsome, that are phobic. He's noting to himself that through taking control and directing his thoughts where they are, what they're focused on, this frees him from fear. And even though he thought it was impossible, which is kind of like a pessimistic outlook, but he tells himself, look, you see that it's possible through doing it. So both of these are just so beautiful, where we can all take a page out of this book and look at something that we're working on to achieve, to become, to experience, and just recognize in the beginning, it's a lot more challenging, but through practice, we gain mastery. And also, it's worthwhile and so helpful for us to look at little ways in which we actually have achieved mastery and actually have achieved goals. Because when we look at the results, when we look at the evidence and we see, oh, I've actually done that in some form or another, then that helps us break the myth that we sometimes tell ourselves, the pessimistic outlook, the projection of things being impossible. So both on the one hand, in the beginning, things are hard, and at the same time, look for how you actually in fact have achieved that, because that helps. The evidence, and concrete evidence, always helps to collapse pessimistic and unrealistic and distorted mental projections. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for receiving this. If any of you would like to be in a deeper conversation, to create your life, to go deeper into your state of being, to live out your purpose and who you're really meant to be and what you would in fact love, I'd love to be in conversation with you. I love you all.